Harry usually introduces his wife. Not last night. And my God, the look she shot him. It's like, you just wait till we're back at home. They really hate each other now, and they cannot hide it anymore.
She was the villain.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
New York didn't just buzz that night, it crackled with something tense, something off, something no one was supposed to notice, except everyone did. Because right there, in the middle of flashing cameras and polished smiles, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry didn't look like a power couple stepping into the spotlight. They looked like two people trying to hold something together that was already slipping. And the shocking part, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, controlled, almost hidden. The kind of tension that leaks through cracks no matter how perfect the image is supposed to be. Because the second Harry stepped out of that sleek black SUV, something felt wrong. Not subtle wrong. Not maybe it's just a bad angle wrong. No, this was visible. His jaw was tight. His shoulders were locked. His eyes didn't meet the crowd. They scanned like someone bracing for impact. And people noticed. Oh, they noticed fast.
I saw the simmering tension between the duplicitous Duke and his facelift-enhanced wife.
Meghan Markle is truly one of the most dangerous public figures on the world stage at the moment. She needs to be stopped.
And then there was Meghan, flawless, polished, almost too perfect. That smile, it snapped on instantly, like a switch being flipped. Every step measured, every glance calculated. But here's where it gets unsettling, because even through the screen, you could feel the distance between them. Not physical distance, no, they stood close enough, but emotional distance. Cold, controlled, like two performances happening side by side, not together. Then everything cracked. A voice cut through the noise, sharp, loud, impossible to ignore. Stop using your kids for money. And just like that, the illusion slipped. Harry's head snapped toward the crowd, fast, reactive, too fast for someone who wasn't already on edge. For a split second, the mask dropped. That calm, composed image, gone, replaced with something raw, frustration, maybe anger, maybe something deeper. Then just as quickly, it was back under control, but not completely, because what came next didn't feel rehearsed. He reached for Meghan's arm, quick, firm, urgent, not affectionate, not gentle. It looked like a signal. Move. Now. His lips moved, saying something low, something hidden under the chaos, something the cameras couldn't catch, but everyone could feel. And suddenly, the energy shifted. The crowd felt it. The cameras captured it. The moment lingered. Those smiles, they didn't land the same anymore. They looked stretched, forced, like something underneath was trying to break through.
Meghan Markle's failed plan to bag a billionaire as her marriage to Prince Harry becomes more unhappy by the day.
She's already gotten the benefit of her bargain with Harry because she got the title. That's what she wanted. She wanted to be world famous. She wanted the title. You remember when Harry was single, he was the elephant. He was the one, the most eligible bachelor on earth. You could be a royal, you could become world famous overnight. You could live in a castle. You could have access to the crown jewels. You would be a princess. My God, yes, he could have had his...
This wasn't the same prince who once defied everything for love. This was someone guarded, careful, controlled in a way that didn't look natural anymore. They walked side by side, yes, but the space between them, it spoke louder than anything either of them said. Every step felt like a question. Every glance felt incomplete. What changed? Because New York that night wasn't just alive, it was watching, waiting. The sirens, the flashes, the murmurs, it all built pressure around what was supposed to be their grand return. The comeback moment, the reclaiming of their narrative. And on the surface, it looked perfect. Golden lights, red carpet, cameras locked in. But underneath, something didn't align. Almost immediately, whispers started. Quiet at first, then louder. People on the ground, staff, insiders began pointing out the same thing. The vibe wasn't right. Not from the beginning, not even before they stepped out.
We'll see you upstairs. Hey, Harry, when you go upstairs.
See her face. You get him, mate. He just doesn't seem to give a damn.
Inside that SUV, something had already shifted. One insider described Harry's expression as ice cold, not distracted, not tired, cold, like he was preparing for something heavy, something unavoidable. And Meghan, still, silent, adjusting her earrings in the reflection, not even glancing at him, not once. And that detail, that small, quiet detail, it stuck. Because by the time the door opened, the cameras were ready, but whatever was happening between them, that wasn't wasn't part of the plan. Harry stepped out first. That alone broke the rhythm. He moved ahead faster than expected, eyes down, not engaging. That usual calm presence? Gone. Replaced with tension that clung to him like weight. And this wasn't new. No, that's the unsettling part. Because just weeks earlier, something similar had already happened. Quietly, privately. A dinner, a table. Meghan reaching for his hand and Harry pulling back. Just slightly. Enough to notice. Enough for someone to say that was the moment something changed. And now, it wasn't private anymore. Experts jumped in fast. Body language analysts, PR insiders. And surprisingly, they all pointed in the same direction. This didn't start in New York. This was building, layer by layer, moment by moment, quietly. Some blamed pressure, the nonstop spotlight, the expectations tied to royalty, to legacy, to everything they represent. But others, they traced it further back, much further. Paris. And suddenly, the story got deeper because what looked like a glamorous return, the outfits, the staging, the confidence, it didn't hold under scrutiny. Meghan in that shimmering gold gown, every movement sharp, intentional, perfectly aimed for the cameras. Harry beside her, composed but off, slightly disconnected, like he was present physically, but somewhere else entirely. Then came that moment again, the shout, the interruption, the words that seemed to hit too close. And again, the reaction, the tightened jaw, the quick glance, the immediate shift back to control, and that grip on her arm, not soft, not reassuring, directed, intentional. From that point on, something changed in the rhythm of the night. They kept moving, yes, kept smiling, kept playing the roles expected of them, but something was missing. Connection. Because when people replayed the footage frame by frame, they didn't focus on what was said. They focused on what wasn't. The pauses, the space, the slight delays in reactions. Harry's hand hanging loosely, fingers twitching like he was holding something back. Meghan reaching toward him, smiling perfectly, but his response? A blink, a pause, a disconnect. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Experts didn't soften it either. One called it defensive withdrawal. Another pointed out Meghan's laughter, just slightly delayed, just slightly off. Not spontaneous, timed, coordinated, but not connected. And then came the pattern. Because this wasn't the first time. A charity event, a conversation shift, that same look from Harry, tight jaw, distant eyes. That same controlled composure from Meghan. And behind the scenes, whispers. A stylist mentioning a disagreement. A fitting cut short. A voice overheard, sharp, direct. A door closing harder than expected. And Harry, quiet, too quiet. That silence became the story. Not what he said, but what he didn't, because instead of reacting, he pulled inward, spoke less, withdrew more. And by the time that red carpet moment happened, that quiet distance had become impossible to hide. Social media saw it instantly. Side-by-side images, comparisons, analysis. To some, it looked romantic. To others, it looked like endurance, like two people playing roles they knew too well but maybe didn't feel the same way anymore. And by the end of the night, even insiders stopped calling it chemistry. They called it performance. And that question, the one no one could shake, kept hanging in the air. What changed? And here's where everything stops feeling like coincidence and starts feeling like a pattern that was quietly building long before New York ever saw them step out of that SUV. Because if you follow the timeline backward, if you strip away the polished smiles and perfectly timed appearances, you land in a place that carries weight far heavier than a red carpet, Paris. Not just any moment, not just another glamorous stop, but a moment that insiders now say changed everything in a way no one publicly acknowledged. Because what looked like a symbolic, almost cinematic walk through the Pont de l'Elma tunnel, so carefully framed, so visually powerful, wasn't received the same way on both sides. For Meghan Markle, it was intentional, thoughtful, layered with meaning, a controlled narrative, a moment designed to resonate. But for Prince Harry, it landed differently, not as a tribute, not as a creative statement, but as something that crossed into territory that felt deeply personal, deeply sensitive. And that's where the shift didn't explode, it sank in. Because insiders didn't describe shouting, they didn't describe chaos, they described something far more unsettling. A quiet, heavy disagreement. The kind where voices stay low, but every word carries weight. Harry reportedly questioned the decision. How something tied so closely to his mother's past could be turned into a filmed moment. Meghan stood her ground, explaining the intention, the symbolism, the vision. But explanation didn't erase feeling. And that night, something didn't resolve. It stayed, it lingered, it grew. Because after Paris, the changes weren't dramatic, but they were consistent. Harry spoke less, reacted less, pulled back in small, almost unnoticeable ways. And Meghan, she adjusted, not by stepping back, but by leaning further into control. More precision, more structure, more perfectly timed moments. And suddenly, what once looked effortless started to look managed. By the time they arrived in New York, that underlying shift had already settled into place. It wasn't fresh tension, it was carried tension. Built up, layered, quietly accumulating in the background until it reached a point where it couldn't stay hidden anymore. And if you look closely at that night again, knowing what may have happened before, everything hits differently. The flashing cameras don't just capture glamour, they expose pauses. The movements don't just look coordinated, they look measured. Every word they say sounds polished, but the silence between those words, that's where the real story sits. Because this isn't loud drama, this is controlled distance. The kind that doesn't announce itself but shows up in the smallest details. A glance that doesn't last. A smile that fades a second too quickly. A reaction that comes just a beat too late. And when those details start stacking up, they stop looking random and start looking intentional. It begins to feel like two people who know exactly how to perform together but aren't fully in sync anymore. Harry's voice, when he speaks, carries a steadiness, but underneath there's restraint. Meghan's tone stays smooth, confident, but there's tension threading through it. Subtle but present. Together, it creates something unusual. Not conflict, not closeness. Structure. And structure, when it replaces spontaneity, always raises the same question. Why? Because real connection doesn't need timing. It doesn't need control. It doesn't need to be held together so tightly. And yet here, everything feels held carefully, deliberately, like if one piece slips, everything else might follow. And maybe that's why people can't look away. Because the more you watch, the more you notice. And the more you notice, the harder it becomes to believe this is just pressure, just stress, just another night under the spotlight. It starts to feel like something deeper, something that's been building quietly, patiently, waiting for a moment to surface. Because here's the truth, no one can fully confirm, but no one can ignore either. When something real starts to feel rehearsed, when connection starts to look routine, the shift doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, in fragments, in pauses, in the things left unsaid. And that's exactly what this feels like. Not an ending, not yet, but a transition. A movement from what once looked natural into something that now feels carefully maintained. And once that line is crossed, it's almost impossible to go back without someone noticing. And people have noticed. They've gone back, replayed the footage, analyzed the details, connected the moments from Paris to New York to everything in between. And what they're seeing doesn't feel like isolated incidents anymore. It feels like pieces of a larger pattern finally becoming visible. Not obvious, not confirmed, but present. And that's what makes it so difficult to ignore, because this isn't about one shout from a crowd. It's not about one tense glance or one awkward moment. It's about how all those moments line up, how they echo each other, how they slowly build into something that feels consistent. And once consistency enters the picture, so does doubt, because people start asking questions they didn't ask before. Was that smile real? Was that moment genuine? Or was it part of something being held together for the sake of the image? And the deeper you go, the more complicated it gets, because long before royal titles, before global attention, before every move was watched, there were earlier chapters, earlier relationships. One name that keeps resurfacing in quiet conversations is Trevor Engelson, Meghan's former husband. A relationship that at the time stayed largely out of public focus, but in hindsight has become part of a broader narrative people are now revisiting. Not because it provides answers, the ones that seem small, until you start connecting them. And once you do, the picture changes. Not completely, not clearly, but enough to make you look twice. And maybe that's why this story isn't slowing down, because people aren't just watching anymore. They're analyzing, comparing, questioning, trying to figure out where performance ends and reality begins. And until that line becomes clear, if it ever does, this won't just be a moment people remember. But it will be a moment people keep returning to again and again, looking for something they feel is there, even if no one has fully said it out loud yet.